Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nerding Out on Neurodiversity, the podcast for all things neurodivergence. I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist and professional speaker, and I'm happy to be your host through the wild trails of the neurodivergent world.
And I'm Jake Noonan, educational coach and humanities teacher, your co-host and producer, and I'm thrilled to help share the stories and the experiences of wonderful people in the world of neurodiversity.
We're really excited for today's guest, which we are going to say a lot because we're always really excited about every guest we get. So let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nerding Out on Neurodiversity. I'm your host, Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist, professional speaker, published author, podcast host. Obviously, that's why we're here, wearer of many hats. With me, as always, is the Ferb to my Phineas, Mr. Jake Noonan. Say hi, Jake.
Oh, hi everybody. It's great to be here as always, and I am so grateful for that reference. I was just actually talking to somebody who knows I don't know gender, so I'm just going to say the child of the creator of Phineas and Ferb.
Ooh.
And I was just hearing about that yesterday.
Well, I mean, if we're going to ring a bell, we should get them on the pod because I got super into Phineas and Ferb years ago, and my sister asked me what I wanted for Christmas. I was like, Phineas and Ferb live tickets. And she's like, okay. So we went to see Phineas and Ferb live, and we walked in, and we were the oldest non-parents in there by 20 years. And I looked around at my sister, she's like, you asked for this. I was like, I'm so excited.
Amazing.
It's such a great show. It's definitely written for grown-ups, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So, all right. Well, I love this. We have a really exciting guest today. Dr. Laura, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Laura Berssenbrugge. I'm a clinical psychologist based in New York City, and I work predominantly with teenagers, young adults who have a variety of things going on that they're working on. I really specialize in like ADHD, autism, neurodiversity, as well as anxiety, depression, and OCD. So yeah, that's what I'm generally up to most days.
I can't imagine why we'd have you on the podcast. I mean, it makes no sense. My son is fond of saying it makes none sense.
Nonsense.
Yeah, it makes none sense, Daddy. And I'm like,
Stealing that.
yeah, I was like, it's so cute. I never want you to stop saying it. Okay, so this is super awesome. And so what was your training like to get to this place? I mean, like we talk a lot about like what got you here. So did you just like wake up one day and say like, the kids who can't pay attention, I'll work with those kids?
Yeah, well, so I guess we have to go all the way back to high school because that was the first time that I think I learned about psychology as a profession. And then, I was always, and I feel like a lot of us in the field were like this, like the therapist friend, which like now realize like, okay, could have set better boundaries, blah, blah, blah. But at the time it was like that person. And quickly realized like, oh, wait, there's a job for this. Like there's actually a way to get paid like to do this work that I actually think that I would probably really like. And so that's how I first started, even just thinking about it. And then went to college for psychology, took a couple of years off before applying to grad school. I actually taught in Japan, which was really fun.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. And then came back, worked at the university in Hawaii, where I'm from, and then also worked with kiddos on the spectrum. And I think that was really when I realized, like, I really love working with this population. And especially, I think for the work that I was doing, only had two clients and really got to know their families. The kids were 5 years old and 7 years old. So it was a lot of kind of like working within the family and really just fell in love with it. And so when I went back for the doctorate, then sought out some of that training. I was really fortunate to get to work in the NYU Child Study Center, their social learning program department and autism spectrum disorder department. And we were really focused on social skills training. So lots of really fun stuff, from that experience. And when I went into private practice, I realized that this is just an area that I just love working with my neurodiverse clients just in general. And so, really kind of sought that out as being a specialty and have kind of built up from there. So I think it was like little points along the way where I got a little bit of a taste and then just realized like, hey, this is actually a clientele that I just really genuinely love working with. And I learned so much from them like every single day.
I mean, wow. NYU's center is really, I mean, they're one of the places that really do live up to that reputation.
Mhm.
When I get referrals from there, it's like, okay, this is a person, I'm not starting with zero. I'm starting, pretty high up along that train
Mhm.
because it's having like good research and good programming around that. I mean, to me, it really sets our kids up for success because it isn't this like, oh, they'll just figure it out, or you've got 30 different grad students doing 30 different things. Like, the protocol and the systematicness of it, I think is really cool.
Yeah, I loved it there. Like honestly, I think I echo everything that you're saying, and it just like was such a great place to be. Like I think the clinicians are like really just not just top notch, but they're just like great people too. And I just like thoroughly enjoyed getting to be there. So they're terrific, really.
Now, I got to ask because I've worked with kids in my career for almost every state, but Hawaii is one of the few states I've never worked with. And, people tell me that I mean, obviously it's unique in many ways, right, as compared to the other 49. But my understanding is that the mental health infrastructure there is not as, say, robust. Was that your experience growing up in Hawaii?
Yeah, I think definitely so. And I hate to say it, but it's gotten a lot better. But I think comparatively to maybe other parts of the country, it's still on its way of developing. And I wonder if some of it might be partially cultural. I think in Hawaii, it's actually a minority majority state. So there, I don't know the statistic right off the bat, but there's a really large Asian population. And I think that has really permeated into some of the values, that are just part of the state. And that includes values around things like mental health. Like, do you handle mental health like inside the family, outside the family? Is it something that is really firmly recognized? Is it like how, as a culture, do we talk about that? And so I think, growing up, it was something that was not really top of mind. I hate to say it. Like, I just remember even being in high school, there were like rumors, and this was back in like the 2000s. So it was a long time ago now, but it wasn't so long ago where, someone is depressed and they have to see a therapist and like people would gossip about that, and it's just like, I think society just in general has come a really long way in terms of like how we talk about like mental health and treatment and all those wonderful things. But I think, for the longest time, there was definitely a stigma in Hawaii. And it's getting better. I think with my colleagues that I have in Hawaii, we do talk about like more people are seeking treatment, more people are thinking about it, there's more awareness, but it's been a slow shift over time for sure.
Fascinating. And that feels like a pretty good segue into sort of the other thing that I know you do, because it's in your email signature. And I've looked at it, I was like, I want to know more about this. So you are the co-founder of the Modern Asian Parent.
Yeah. Hmm.
So this is, I mean, as like the whitest guy in the universe, other than the guy virtually sitting next to me, who might also be the other whitest guy in the universe. This is a world where I would be hungry to learn a lot more about this. I mean, like, where did this organization come from? What do you do? Why does it matter to you? I mean, I'm sure you're not doing it for just for the fun.
Yeah.
So walk us through it, Dr. Laura.
Yeah. So, it came out of a desire for myself and a really great, cherished colleague, Dr. Michelle Chung, who's the co-founder. out of a desire to actually do something with each other. We have known each other for a really long time, work with the same families. And we were catching up last year and we're like, hey, actually, a lot of the families that we both individually work with are Asian or Asian American. And we just started like debriefing on just some of the just like main themes that we see with those families and realized that we were seeing exactly the same things. And I think, the modern Asian parent grew out of a desire to basically just increase our reach in terms of just like evidence-based skills for parents, particularly, I think for parents that might have been raised in more traditional Asian households, we can think of that stereotypical like tiger parent, who might have grew up with that as being their model, but don't want to replicate that with their own children now. So the premise is that, we still tap into like Asian values. We really talk a lot about just celebrating different, practices that might come with being Asian, like making dumplings or having something centered around a meal, celebrating certain holidays. And then also trying to build in just evidence-based parenting skills that will be a bit of a push. So it'll be teaching people things, but then at the same time will be culturally resonative. So a lot of what we focus on is things like validation, focusing on process rather than outcome. So process rather than achievement, across the board, not just within academics, but just kind of, a lot of different things. And we also focus a lot on just giving parents tools to emotionally regulate, recognizing that actually emotion regulation for their kid oftentimes starts with emotion regulation for them. So equipping them with skills that they feel comfortable working with. And then the last thing is that we really focus on unpacking like intergenerational trauma. So that's something that we've kind of added into our model, but really just recognizing that no one parents within a bubble. We all are really influenced by the generations before us and really beginning to break down, what was my parenting like? When mom did that thing and I observed her, how did that make me feel? Is that something that I would want to continue on with my child? Is that something that I might want to change and do something differently? So there's a lot of that foundational work kind of built in for parents to really think about where they came from and to be very mindfully approaching, how they want to be parenting.
That just seems so powerful. And you're taking good practice, but you're sending it through the lens of that culturally informed stuff. That is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in grad school, I'm not sure if that you guys use this word, but like that idea of being a cultural anthropologist,
Mm-hmm.
of like, hey, I can acknowledge I don't know enough about your culture to like do this, accurately enough. Like, and you don't need to like download everything but tell me what I need to know to do this better. But like, as someone from that community, I think I mean, obviously you've got that referent power to say like, yes, guys, there's a lot of this I understand a lot better than, Dr. Matt, who like, and that's a powerful thing, right? It's a huge, it's a variable that not everybody can grasp. So if
Mhm.
we can bring that to bear, I mean, I think that's so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's the goal for sure. And we do a lot. We actually just got nonprofit status, which we're so excited about. So we're like, yay, the paperwork came through. So we're very thrilled about that.
We love paperwork. Yay!
I know, right?
It's the best part by far.
Why we all became therapists. Yeah, so that's exciting. But we have a lot of like free programming. We do a lot of like free webinars. We have a lot of like worksheets and handouts and workbooks. So, I think it's our mission really just to build some awareness. And we're so thrilled about the becoming a nonprofit too, because we're hoping to maybe apply for some grants and things like that in the future.
I mean, and it's just so needed.
Mhm.
a lot of times when I tell people what I do working with neurodivergent kids with that focus on giftedness, it's only so long before somebody asks me a question of like, how many Asian people do you see?
Mhm.
And I've got to bite my tongue and roll my shoulders. And I'm like, let me give you an answer that doesn't make me want to throw this cold drink in your face. We say on this pod all the time, like knowledge is not only power, knowledge is empowerment.
Mm.
When we help all the stakeholders understand more of this, right? I think that you empower the parents to do better, their kids to do better, but also the people from the schools to interact with both of those groups more effectively, right? Because like
Mhm.
I see so much stereotype threat here when I work with my Asian American clients, right? Like you
Mm.
get all those questions like, oh, so like how long have you been doing classical music or coding? And it's like, maybe this young person wants to be an artist. Maybe this person wants to play football. Are we really going to jam an entire rich culture into these tiny little boxes?
Mhm.
I just thank you for that. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And, it's so funny. We use that example of like what to do when your kid wants to become an artist actually all the time. And, I think where we always land is that you actually want to play to your kids' natural strengths, right? And really be honoring and celebrating that. And I think that's also where that step back as a parent, I think actually, across cultures is important of like what dreams or expectations do I have for my child? And actually coming to terms with like your child is a separate person with their own dreams and their own expectations for themselves, and being able to take that step back to be supportive of their journey is so, so, so important. It's like amazing to become an artist, right? So I think that's definitely something that we end up talking a lot about too.
I want to kind of touch on the Japan thing a little bit
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
I taught in South Korea for a year, and the
Cool.
culture stuff, like I'm super interested in like the comparison between the two,
Mm.
because in Korea when I was there it was a huge push for like you have to go to school from 7 to 3, let's say, and then right after your school's done you're going to a private school for cello, and then right
Mm.
after that cello one's done you're going to go for dinner, and then you're going to go back to school until 10 p.m. for like a chemistry class.
Wow.
And that would be 5 days a week, and for some kids it would be also on Saturdays and Sundays, so they'd be going like non-stop all the way through.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm curious if that's what it was like at all in Japan. And then a caveat to that is like knowing that Asian culture isn't like a monolith. Like not every like culture in every country in Asia is different.
Mhm.
How do you end up navigating like that, those kind of elements? If somebody comes to you and they're like, my background is my family's from strictly Japan,
Mhm.
or my family's strictly from South Korea, my family's strictly from like Indonesia. Like,
Mhm.
how do you end up navigating that stuff too?
Yeah, those are both great. So I guess I'll start with what it was like in Japan. So, I think that I'll say this, that I was in an 8,000 person mining town in the middle of the mountains in essentially a prefecture that was like equivalent to, I would say, maybe Kansas. Like it was like very, very different from, let's say, kids going to school in Tokyo or one of the bigger cities. But there was still a lot of structure built into their schedules. I was predominantly working with middle schoolers, so like the equivalent of sixth through eighth grade. I heard from my friends that high schools were way more intense and really mirrored what you were describing, Jake. But in middle school, they kind of did school. There was a lot of structure built into it, just like certain kind of like rituals and traditions. The kids always clean the gym and classrooms at lunch. Like that was something that happened every day that I always thought was really cool. And then kids just finished and then did one after school activity. And then usually we're back home probably around like 5. Like I would see all my middle schoolers kind of like biking back home. So
Like a whole trip for them?
totally, totally. It's like, oh, there they go. Like
Yep.
that group is done with band. Like that group is
The March of the Middle Schoolers.
exactly. Yeah. But I think it might have been different in bigger cities, but it was pretty. it was pretty chill. Like I would say for the most part, at least with the schools that I was working with. For your other question, that's such a great point because I think the biggest thing that we start with is that every Asian culture is so, so, so different from each other. And actually, historically, there have been a lot of differences over time, right? We're talking like millennia that there's been a lot of differences. And so I think something that we really try to approach our clients with is just essentially not making any assumptions and asking curious questions to just learn more about their culture. Because I think this can sometimes happen and where it's like, oh, they're Asian too. And then we might make some type of assumption based on our own experience. But that actually can sometimes be maybe not the best thing because your experiences might not align. And so a lot of the times I'll default to more of those like Socratic open-ended questions just to get more information from them.
I love Socratic questioning so much.
You said the magic word.
I'm so happy that you said
No, I do
that.
too. They're so good, aren't they?
Like perfect thing to use for teaching, for like pretty much everything.
Hmm.
We're gonna have to set this up like Pee-wee's Playhouse, where it's like, use that Socratic questioning, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
That usually does happen at least like once an episode.
It's almost like we talk to like really insightful, educated, wise humans who ask good questions. Weird, I don't know.
And then there's us.
Or it's just a statistically improbable coincidence. One of those two things. I mean, I remember, during the sort of the darkest times of the early COVID pandemic, we had neighbors in our old neighborhood, and they were from Thailand,
Mm.
and there was a lot of specifically anti-Chinese
Hmm.
sentiment, which very quickly metastasized into this sort of "you're Asian and I'm against you."
Hmm. Hmm.
And I remember our neighbors saying like, "Well, do you think I'm going to be okay because I'm Thai?" And it was heartbreaking, but I was like, I think a lot of people can't tell the difference.
Hmm. Hmm.
They don't choose to tell the difference.
Yeah.
And it was funny because their kiddo was a very high level athlete, just to protect their confidentiality. I don't know how it would come up, but let's say volleyball. They were very good at volleyball. But so their kiddo was this very fit kid. And people were like, oh, so how many black belts do you have? And this kid would just roll his eyes like,
Hmm.
I think this is sort of broadly how we talk to our clients in general. It's like, how do we prepare our clients for a world that may not understand them either from a place of ignorance or, God forbid, a place of malice?
Hmm.
How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean that's like heartbreaking. First of all,
Tell me about I got choked up telling the story.
yeah, I know. And I mean, it sounds like that son handled it really beautifully, right? Like he just kind of was able to like move through it. So hopefully it's really hard, right? Because I think the big thing is that we don't want to sugarcoat things, right? Because the reality is that there are biases, there are stereotypes, there is racism, that's there, microaggressions, especially. And I think what we really encourage, particularly families as well as I would say preteens and teens, because they can really engage in this, is really just thinking about like how privately, like how we're talking about, just like identity, seeing it as being a strength. And even just seeing like, okay, if we're to try to tune out everything else that's on the external, like what are some things that I really appreciate or love about my culture? And I think that's something that applies for, Asian kiddos, it can apply to so many different ethnicities and race and, people of different races that is really going to be a source of strength. And what research shows is that actually how family talks about things like identity and race, and the family itself is protective and really open and supportive, that actually is it's a great predictor of outcomes, but can be very protective, almost as a buffer for the external. So I think it's, I would just recommend to parents especially, just to have those conversations like within your family as well as with your children And then also just being really not like non-judgmental, right? And saying like, I'm here for you if you want to talk about it. It's also okay if you don't want to talk about it. I think for someone like a teenager, like probably will open up, they might not, and that's okay, right? Like that's developmentally appropriate too. And then I think in sessions with my Asian clients, so I would say teens, young adults, it's something that we definitely talk about very openly, right? And I think like my role as a therapist is really just to just provide that safe space and be really non-judgmental and just be supportive and validating of the experience. I've found that sometimes some of my clients will do a certain amount of like gaslighting of themselves, right? So they'll question their own experience of like maybe it wasn't that bad. I think in those moments, I really try to just say like, hey, let's go through the facts again, and then let's actually like kind of see what happened, what led to one thing or another, and then let's reassess it. And that sometimes can be helpful for them to see, oh, wait a minute, actually, it was as bad as I was feeling. And then, it's sometimes important for them to actually explore where did that urge to self gaslight or to maybe minimize it? Where did that come from? Because that's actually where we can do a lot of work.
I have a question from that
Yeah.
also, and like I love that so much because it's super important. I
Hmm.
was thinking back on like my mom.
Mm.
Bit of context, like my mom is 100% Jewish, whole
Hmm.
family like background. My dad's not, so he's like Irish Catholic. And when we moved out of Philadelphia and into the suburbs, my mom, she told me this like way later when I got older, but she was worried about telling people around her that she was Jewish.
Mm.
And that slowly like imparted itself onto like me and my brother to the point where a lot of my friends wouldn't know that I was Jewish at all until I was like, we've known each other for like 10 years now and you're just finding out kind of thing.
Hmm.
So I'm almost curious, like how does that kind of element end up playing a factor in how I'll use myself as an example, as like I'm essentially like half Jewish, half Catholic, if you will.
Hmm.
So in integrating those two cultural identities, like how does that start playing a factor? And like what would you say for like those kind of people who are struggling with that too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is really great timing. I was just having a conversation with a colleague yesterday just about cultures coming together in our children, literally. And how do because in some ways it's your child ends up having like a different experience, than one parent or the other. And like, what can people do to navigate that? And I would say that it's complex in a lot of ways, right? In the sense that our identities really can go through different shifts over time. Our understanding of like which culture we might identify more with is very common, right? Like I think especially when we're younger, just to almost feel like you identify more with one culture versus the other. And then it can sometimes flip. And then, I think at the end is this form of like integration within ourselves that it's like we're almost like we are who we are because of both or, the multiple cultures that are part of us. And I think it definitely is a process for sure. And I would say, like, in case if anyone is in that process right now for themselves, like just to be curious about it. And I think that there's no pressure at all, right, to choose one side or another. Like just really like wherever you're at in terms of like that identity development is where you are. Over time, it might change, and that is absolutely fine. And it's also interesting because tomorrow is Loving Day, so it's like it was a really big legislation that came out that basically allowed like interracial marriages back in the 60s. The conversation I was having with colleagues was actually planning for an event that's happening tomorrow. And so we talked a lot just about, biracial identity, multiracial identity, and I myself am actually biracial. That's where the Berssenbrugge comes from, actually. So I'm a quarter Dutch. But how like the individual experience is just going to be really unique. And it's okay to have different feelings. Like I remember when I was younger, interesting because I physically present super Asian, but because I grew up in Hawaii and, Hawaii is predominantly Asian, like I felt like my cool factor was that I was also part white and biracial. So I remember being younger and getting sometimes upset when people were like, "Oh, I didn't know you were white." But then, I kind of had to work through that. And then it's just been interesting over time to see my shift in identity come to this place where it's really integrated now. But, at various points, I think if someone had said, like, you need to choose a side or not, or, had kind of interjected their own perspectives, that potentially could have been detrimental. But, it was fortunate that no one ever really did that. So I was able to kind of go at my own pace.
Dr. Matt looks like he has a very specific question in his mind.
Honestly, though, the place my brain took me to was, Dr. Laura, are you a fan of musical theater?
Yeah, I am.
Have you seen Hamilton? I mean, you spent time in New York.
Yeah, have
It's a tiny
to.
little show. You probably haven't heard of it.
Yeah. Definitely. So I remember waiting for the tickets. Remember like when it first came out and there was like the lottery system? Yeah. I got bypassed like 3 times and then and eventually got the tickets. Yeah.
I called in every favor I knew. And earlier this year, we had our friend Bethany on the podcast. Her husband was the original sound designer for Hamilton. So he has a Tony.
So
It's in their
cool.
living room. It's super weird. It's like,
Wow.
that's a painting. That's your college diploma. That's a Tony Award. That's Bluey. There's Bluey also right there.
That's so amazing.
But the kid that they cast as Hamilton when Hamilton did the national tour was Asian American.
Hmm.
And I remember like him doing an interview and people like were trying to like, how can you rap? And he said he's like Lin-Manuel is someone who said like rapping is not just for African American people, right? It's not just for the Black community.
Hmm.
Like I've always been a fan of hip hop. I've always been a fan of those sort of immigrant stories. And he's like, I'm putting my own spin on that as an Asian American. I remember thinking to myself, like, this is a person who's like owning all the parts of that identity, both like from biological, familial, but also from acculturation.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what a cool thing. Like, but
Yeah.
like, you're like, so can you actually do the thing? Like, no, Lin-Manuel Miranda just cast me just for shits and giggles, right? Like, you got this,
Hates.
right?
Yeah.
Just wanted to make people mad.
Yeah, right. Well,
Yeah.
not that he's afraid to do that, right? But yeah, I mean, that's so neat. So, as you see, your journey as a professional growing, like
Hmm.
where do you see the field headed? Like where does your work as a therapist go? Where does your work with the modern Asian parent? Like
Hmm.
I think right now we're all sort of looking to that horizon. Like it feels like we're at a moment of big change.
Hmm.
So poke into your crystal ball for me. Where do you see all this going?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to poke into my like hopeful dream crystal ball, like
Thank
where I
you.
really, really want it to go. And where I think that we actually can go. I mean, I think, a big thing is that I would say as practitioners, we're moving away from, diagnosis being like the tried and true like anchor, right? So seeing people for who they are as people rather than boxes that need to be fit into. And, I see that as being a really amazing gift because I think that actually broadens our ability as practitioners to really treat our clients for who they are rather than saying this person has generalized anxiety disorder. I need to do this manual or, this person has this trauma. So we have to do this type of talk therapy. I think that there's probably going to be more of a move towards a certain amount of integration, which is really, really exciting and having it be truly like person centered. It's such an exciting time in terms of things like just the celebration of neurodiversity. Like it's incredible, like how much movement has happened even within the past, I would say even like 3 years. It's really, there's been so much awareness. And I really am hopeful that that movement will help with a lot of destigmatization, right? And I think clinically, what I'm trying to continue to do, but then, really try to do more is really just like normalizing and validating experiences, rather than pathologizing it, right? And I think that's really kind of our goal as practitioners is to provide that safe space where it's like, just because you've been getting in trouble because you're having a hard time paying attention and the teacher is getting mad at you doesn't mean that that's like your fault, right? And so I think I'm really hopeful that that conversation is going to start changing over time because it already is. There's such a movement and it's a very empowering one. So hoping that it just continues to grow that way. The last thing that I'll say is that I think in terms of gender and sexuality, that there's so much growth that's happening. And I think this is just like one of the coolest things that I think is happening, just in terms of there being a huge generational shift in terms of how we even discuss, gender and sexuality and moving very much away from just like binary thinking. So I can see this happening for real that as alpha gen Z like grows up outside of those systems, that they'll be creating different policies, they'll be changing things in terms of the dialogue that we have. So I'm very hopeful there as well. So I forecast growth. Like,
can I add some extra hope for that for you?
yes, please.
Reinforcement, I guess, validation for it?
No more hope.
Okay, sorry.
We need hope.
I won't give you more hope. No, I like what you've been alluding to, like essentially like in everything that you've been talking about, and what Dr. Matt and I do as well is aligned with a cultural movement that I've been talking to Dr. Matt about a little bit, but it's not like taking off too much yet, but it's like there in the scholarly field.
Mm-hmm.
And it's metamodernism, which is like taking the binary like A and B, understanding both, taking the good from both, and then being like, I don't want both of these, I don't want either of these, I'm going to use them as I need to.
Mm-hmm.
And that like expands to broad ideas all the way down to like, do I want this thing or that thing to eat for lunch?
So interesting. I love that.
And that's like a huge thing that's happening currently in like academia, at least on the humanities side.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you can even see flavors of it in psychology, right? Like even, well, I feel like autism has always been such a front runner with like progressing that and really seeing it in terms of not a binary, but a spectrum. And even for like OCD, and then also even for like psychosis and schizophrenia, like it's moving outside of the discrete binary model and more towards understanding things on, it's on a scale, like on a spectrum. So that's really exciting too.
I mean, fine, we'll add more hope. I mean,
we can put some despair in if you want.
I know.
I mean, I think there's enough. Like one of the talks that I get asked to do a lot is a talk I do on the psychology of hope.
Mm.
I always open with that it's a gift from oh my goodness, The Princess Bride, where it's like he opens the book, it's like, so where were we? Ah, yes, the pit of despair. Because it is rough out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dr. Laura, I don't know how much self-care stuff they did in your grad program, because they were like, hey, every so often you guys should like take a lunch or something.
Totally.
Go eat lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but that was really the extent to which of self-care instruction we got in our program. And that was before things exploded. As one of my clients said to me yesterday, he's like, I miss precedented times. Do you not miss precedent? I was like, so every day. Because, I mean, you can't CBT your way out of a global political, economic, military, industrial, economic more words,
Mm-hmm.
crisis, right? Like, I think that we have to acknowledge how hard things are
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to have meaningful, authentic hope as we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to be Pollyanna here. Like, no one's whistling through the graveyard like, nope, things are fine.
Right.
And I say that as a cishet white guy. I'm like, things are fine. They're not fine.
There is no war in Ba Sing Se.
But like the thing that really resonated with me when you were talking about this is that is this idea that hope is a movement, right? These things are happening. Not just one person believes that we should step outside of a gender binary, but a generation is coming up believing that that is a thing. And we're seeing those same trends in neurodivergence. I mean, there's going to come a time, probably pretty soon, where we don't, in the work that we all do, we don't have to sit there and level set with stakeholders. Like, okay, here's what neurodivergence is. Here's what being transgender is. Here's what being, gender non-binary or bisexual is. Instead, we're going to be like, cool, we have a shared language. Let's work on getting this person's needs met. And part of the reason we started this podcast is to have those high-level conversations with other professionals in all sorts of fields, because we don't have to spend 20 minutes of this podcast going, okay, and then here's what ADHD actually is. No, it is not too much sugar, I promise you.
It's not just squirrel, squirrel, squirrel.
Squirrel, right? You're like, yes, that's hilarious. Also, if you have ADHD, you know that it is so much more than that. But those are the parts that don't end up in pop culture, right? The crippling self-doubt, right? Just to pick something out of the air.
That's the fun one too.
Why am I a professional speaker? Because if everybody loves me, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Laura was much more self-possessed than I am. So
No, I'm actually trying to think of a zinger and nothing came to mind, but I'm trying. If I seem like I'm more reserved, I'm like, how can I match this level of funniness? I'm like, I don't know if that's my greatest strength, but I'm trying.
Steps. That's the important part.
Yeah, exactly. Little mini exposures.
There you. Oh man. Ooh.
As my fiance says, it's like a microdosing of disappointments for some people for certain things. So
microdosing of disappointments.
A microdose of humor.
Right.
We love you, Jack. That's awesome.
That's so funny. I love that though, a movement of hope, right? And I think, Dr. Matt, to your points, we do have to really be honest with what's going on in the world and also really err on the side of self-validation. I think that is a really, really big piece here. And, something that I've landed on with my clients is really, helping them to process just their thoughts, their feelings, that are coming up with just what's happening, within our country, globally right now. And then also having them think about what's inside their field of agency, right? So, I think there's a lot of research to support that actually when we feel hopeless, if we feel like we have no agency, that's sometimes kind of the worst predictor. So actually helping them to see okay, you understand what's going on here, and within your scope, what do you want to do about it? And helping them to really think about that. And we also talk a lot about just personal values and really getting solid in their personal values, and also just recognizing that right now what's happening might feel really bad to them because it doesn't align with those personal values, and they don't have to change their value system in order to survive this time. In fact, it's actually a time to really take stock of those values and almost double down, because it is a source of strength. And I think that's where on a personal level, we can actually really empower ourselves. So that's that conversation. I'm so glad that you brought it up because that's been coming up quite a lot, even within the past couple of weeks. So there's a lot going on.
Values, I think, are so foundational to the work we do, because I think not only does it personalize, right, and gets us out of that therapy as manual stuff, which we know is falls short in a lot of meaningful ways, right? But it's so fundamental to the work we do here at NDC, where it's just listen, if you tell me you just want to get a B- in English so you can pass that class and focus on your coding, I'll help you with that. I don't need you to be the perfect student, but giving people a space where those things can be expressed and authentically validated. That's, I think, the idea. And I could see how that could layer in to sort of pushing back on that. model minority stuff that we see so much in the Asian American community, right? It's like you're allowed to be imperfect. You're allowed to live your values. And if your values point you in a direction where like some things fall off for you to proceed in other areas, well, then that's living an authentic life. And that's kind of the dream. That's what we're all here to do. So, wow.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
What you just said was so powerful for like work on like suicidology and like, the idea is like suicide is like a disease of disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
So we may have to have you back so we can talk about that because we can't do that in the next 6 minutes properly. That
Yeah.
I actually just doorknobbed our own podcast. I'm very, very proud. By the way, Dr. Laura, I'm changing my name and moving to Uruguay. Bye. Okay, see ya.
I know. But how are we going to do the second podcast?
Part two.
Part two. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But yes, I mean, just so much richness here. And I just blown away by you. Not surprised, but impressed.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So let's move in to our wrap up questions. Jake, do you want to take the first one?
Absolutely. Love taking the first one.
I was like, I know you do. So,
but before I even do, there is just one other idea that I want to throw out there because, like, my background's really deep in humanities and like the broad, like, from history, like the first culture all the way to now, and I think it's interesting that knowing how human people have developed, like it's been so isolated for so many years, and there's obviously going to be like a couple people who like venture out and it's like I'm going to go from South Africa to Russia or something, and like that's when cultures start to mix, but it wasn't as frequently. And now with the internet, with like easy transportation from like planes, trains and whatnot, that's gotten so much more. And I think we're seeing that like explosion in a sense of like multi-generational, multi-ethnic, like individuals. And it's starting to throw a wrench in how society as a whole functions because we're not used to that. Like we're just used to it being like homogenous in one direction or another and like maybe a little bit of blending, but not like here's 6 different cultures coming together in one person.
Right.
How are we going to handle that?
Yeah, yeah. That's so true. I know. I think that we all just need to move to Hawaii. That's what I'm hearing. Where it was built for and by people that are exactly what you're describing from so many different cultures and so many different ethnic backgrounds. So I think that's our answer.
I'm here for it.
Right.
I'll definitely be going to Hawaii.
Will my insurance company reimburse me for that? Is that in network or out of network?
Yeah, it's like, can this be a write-off?
Yeah.
If only. But my question for you, though, aside from that, is what's your favorite word and why?
Oh, this is a great one. Okay. You know what's so funny is like I heard my 6th grade self like pop into my brain right there, and I had a little bit for this in 6th grade. So I'm just gonna say that first. But I learned the word in 6th grade, capricious, and I really loved that word. And I remember saying that describing myself as being kind of like a capricious Capricorn because that's when I was born. And I remember really identifying with that word at the time. I would say now, this is hard. The first thought that came up was wonder. I think wonder is something that I think I really cherish as one of my own personal values, of just being able to sometimes see just like wonder in things that might be really challenging or, really kind of craving those experiences that can provide that for me, like going for a hike or, engaging, being in nature, being with friends and really being wonder filled from them because they do such incredible things. So I always like that word a lot.
Our wondering capricious Capricorn.
Yeah.
Capricious is a great word. I just want to say, but like I think wonder is so foundational to the work we do as mental health professionals, right? Well, we will accept both.
Thank you.
Okay. My question is going to be a little bit more prosaic. I'm going to warn you in advance. If you could have any superhero in the world on speed dial, who would it be and why?
Ooh. Does it have to be a superhero or could it be like a Gandalf?
Ooh,
We are pro Gandalf. And how about any empowered person?
ooh.
How about
Okay,
that?
100% Gandalf. Um, because I think there's something about him that I've always found comforting just being I was a Lord of the Rings fan clearly and still am,
How could you not be? Let's be honest.
right? He's like more powerful than humans, so there's something that's kind of comforting in that, and he's like solely just for good. There's something comforting in that. And then he's really relatable and can talk to everyone, and then is really great in a crisis. Like he just kind of shows up when you thought that he had died. So he's a great one to like bail you out and then to also be nice about it.
All right. I love that answer. I think that's the first Gandalf we've gotten. Now, Dr. Laura, I'm gonna ask you something, and now you don't have to do this, but I think it would be awesome if you did.
Mhm.
Can you give us a "You shall not pass"?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, wait, I have my pen.
Okay.
Okay, you shall not pass. Thank you very
Flawless.
much.
Yes.
Are you Ian McKellen?
I have no notes at this time. That was spectacular.
Oh, thanks so much, guys. Like, thank you. I appreciate it. Like,
And this is not a video podcast, but we do little video clips to promote it. Jake, I think you found your clip.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Presented without any context. Just Dr. Laura.
You shut up.
Why, you fools? And then we all run away.
Exactly.
All right. Well, now that you have actually managed to upstage yourself, Dr. Laura, we love that for you. Send us home with some wisdom. Like what else do we need to know about you and from you?
Oh, I love that. You know, I would say the first thing that came to mind is that there's a lot of anxiety and stress just happening right now. And I think a lot for people who are maybe on the younger side, we're kind of in unprecedented times right now, but that also doesn't mean that humans aren't designed to be resilient, right? And so I actually personally find comfort sometimes in history, and just thinking that, wow, there were points in the world and time where things were looking really, really bleak for different reasons, and humans managed to get through it. And life kind of continued. So I would say that even if it's feeling kind of stressful or anxiety provoking on that bigger level, that we're designed to be resilient creatures and people. And so we'll be okay and you'll be okay. And the biggest thing would be just to think about, solidify in your own values, think about like how that defines you as a person, and then just think about what's around you. We might not be able to change things on the super, super, super macro level individually, but on that micro level, you affect change every single day, with the people around you, with organizations that you are interested in, at school, at work. So that's really the places that we can feel good about. And, it might just feel like it's another boring day, but I challenge you to actually think about just like three things that you learned in a day, and it'll really, really surprise you, just like how much you do.
Wow. Awesome. It's all interconnected, right? So like whatever strands you can pull, and some days you can yank a whole handful out, and sometimes you're just tugging a little bit. If we're all trying to change the world, every little bit not only can help, but does help. And I think that's a beautiful thing to wrap us up on, because the work you're going to do, the best work you're going to do, is anchored in that place of identity and values, like who
Mhm.
you are, what matters to you, and what kind of world you want to live in now and grow into. So, what a beautiful summation. I love it. So, for all of us here at Nerding Out at Neurodiversity, thank you, Dr. Laura, for an amazing podcast. We learned a lot. We had some laughs. We have an amazing clip to put on social media, which is going to live forever when it goes super viral. We're very excited about that. But this is, just an honor to talk to you and learn about your work. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for trusting us with your time. That means a lot to us. So for all of us here, thank you so much. Jake, you want to send us out?
Absolutely. Always great to be here. Take care, everybody. Dr. Laura, so glad we got to connect over Zoom rather than just a phone call.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much for being here too.
Thank you both. This was so much fun.
Take care, everybody.
Nerding Out on Neurodiversity is brought to you by Dr. Matt Zakreski and the team at the Neurodiversity Collective. To learn more about the Neurodiversity Collective or to be a guest on the podcast, please visit our website at www.theneurodiversitycollective.com/podcast. Audio and production by Jake Noonan. Show your support by subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, and telling your friends about us. Our Instagram and social media handles are at #NoonPodcast, NOON podcast. Your support is appreciated and keeps us going. All discussions presented on this podcast are strictly for informational purposes, awareness, and understanding. The advice presented is not and should not be considered to be therapeutic in nature. If you have any mental health questions, please contact your provider. All rights reserved.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.